Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pitts. Ukraine war news update, third part thereof for the, goodness me, what is it, 20th of February 2024. I need to go and have a lie down and a cup of tea. However, I will do this first. Now, just to let you know, I am hoping to speak to German aid from Ukraine tomorrow for one of our updates about German aid. He's such an interesting guy to talk to, part of the Tochny team. Germany is becoming ever more a central part of the aid to Ukraine. And so there's always lots to talk about concerning Ukraine with him. So join us tomorrow for a live to discuss that. Right. Okay. We're going to start with general geopolitical stuff, and I've got, just because I had too many tabs, I had to split it. So I put US stuff in a tab later. So there is a US section to come. Right, Budapest will not block the 13th package of sanctions against Russia. This is really good news. But there would have been some compromises taking place. This is according to the Hungarian foreign minister. So according to him, such a decision was taken due to the fact that at the stage of preparation, it was possible to remove all items contrary to Hungarian interests. So what happened is there's this 13 package of sanctions the EU wants to release and enforce. Hungary said no because there were issues to do with Chinese sanctions or issues concerning Chinese entities. Now, the reason why, I mean, this is great that they have compromised and the sanctions are going to get out, but actually there is a big worry here. So Hungary has not only cozied up to Russia, quite obviously in the last however many months and years, but also China has been cozying up to Hungary has been cozying up to China. So Beijing's move comes at a time when Budapest's relationship with the EU and its NATO allies is at a low point. So China offers to deepen security ties with Hungary. This is a massive alarm bell going off, right? You've got Hungary within the EU saying, no, EU, you can't do that. No, you can't do that. And meanwhile, you got Putin going, whispering in Viktor Orban's ear. And he said, oh, what's that? Oh, yeah, you definitely can't do that either. Oh, yeah, and that other thing. Yeah, don't do that. And so Hungary is just in the pocket of Russia. And that's a compromise to the EU, to national security or international security within the EU. And then you've got China, who are mates with Russia, coming into the other ear over here. What's that? Oh yeah, and you can't do that either. You don't want sanctions. Yeah, and you can't sanction these guys because they're our new mates. Whoa, this is a problem. We have Hungary being cozied up to by part of this axis. I don't want to call China an axis of evil, but China are a challenge to the rules-based order. China is not a democratic nation. It doesn't have freedom of press. It has human rights issues way beyond what we would expect in the Western democratic world. And China is a challenge. Russia, on top of that, Russia is just very much a bad egg when it comes to the world. And then you've got Iran, and then you've got North Korea. It wouldn't surprise me one iota if in 2 weeks' time you've got Viktor Orban. Instead of Russia and China on each shoulder, he's got, all right, Tehran, how you doing? Oh, sorry, I've just got Kim on the phone over here from North Korea. You guys are good guys, aren't you? All right, Kim. God, should we form a team? Why are you guys all so friendly with me? You didn't get what's going on here? Why am I so popular? I like it. I like being this popular. These guys over there, they hate me. Why am I so popular? Oh, you're trying to use me. You're trying to use me for leverage inside the EU. I get it. I'm just a tool. I am a tool. I'm a tool. Says Viktor Orban, not me. I'm not a tool. Dutch far-right leader Geert Wilders criticises Ukrainian refugees. This is where the man is showing his true colours. So he's a right-wing populist, that big sort of blonde hair, almost Trumpian in its bouffancy. That's not a word. He is attempting, I don't even know what's going on, Dutch people tell me, with regards to forming a government. So we have We had a coalition, as you would expect, with proportional representation in European nations. That Mark Rutte was in charge of things, and now that's all over. And I presume they're just in the middle of still trying to form a government. Even though his party got the most, not many other parties want to go into coalition with him. So it doesn't look like Geert Wilders will be the prime minister or anything like that. However, as a far-right leader, he's railed against the Ukrainian refugees on yesterday, saying that they are coming to the Netherlands for, quote, free housing, free healthcare, and your jobs. I mean, gee, this is old-school anti-immigration populism being targeted at people running away from a war. Like, imagine saying that to refugees from the Second World War. Imagine in the UK just shut down our borders and say, yeah, you Jews, you're coming in here for our jobs. No, we open our borders to people fleeing from outright hostilities, especially within the European kind of larger geographical family. And we show humanity, but not Geert Wilders, whose Party for Freedom, PVV, won 37 of the 150 seats in parliamentary elections in November, has long been vocally anti-immigration, but has also made a number of statements in favour of Russia and against the Netherlands continuing to provide support to Ukraine. You know, we know which side your bread is buttered, my friend, and we know who's doing the buttering. And it looks like Putin. Estonian Prime Minister Kaja Kallas said, as she's becoming quite a prominent leader at the moment, said the West should seize Russia's frozen assets before the US elections. According to Financial Times, quote, elections are always turbulent times. It's always better to do everything we can before important elections. Washington has been pushing its allies to find ways to seize 260 billion euros of Russian central bank assets that were immobilized in response to Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. About 191 billion euros of Moscow's assets are held in Euroclear, a Brussels-based securities depository. Kallas said seizing Russian funds would be an additional tool that could, alongside military aid to Ukraine and moves to isolate Russia politically, help bring an end to the war. Quote, this is economic pressure we can place on the Russian economy to hasten the breaking point of this war, she said. So really important. I agree that, especially if you're worried about what's going to happen in November onwards in the US, let's try and get these things done as soon as possible. Now, Estonia, to continue with this Estonian theme, has successfully stopped a hybrid operation by Russia's security services on our territory, says Kaja Kallas herself. We know the Kremlin is targeting all of our democratic societies. Our answer, be open and reveal their methods. This is the way to deter harmful actions and make us resilient. So there's been Russian special services been behind an attack supposedly on an Estonian minister's car. This kind of overactivity probably doesn't help the Russians, actually, and will unify, I guess, European and Estonian resolution against Russia. Estonia detained 10 alleged Russian agents who were supposed to destabilize the situation in the country. This was announced by Kallas and Foreign Minister Sakhnekner. Who puts KHKN next to each other? Who does that? Estonians. ERR reported that the Estonian Ministry of Foreign Affairs will summon the Russian chargé d'affaires due to the detention of alleged Russian agents. Right, speaking of Mark Rutte, as I already had, the former Dutch premier, he gave a speech at the Munich Security Conference. It was a powerful one. Anton Gerashchenko strongly recommends reading it, and sincerely thanking Mr. Rutte. So just a summary, he said Europe needs to invest more in defence capabilities, increase arms production and do more to support Ukraine. Yeah. We don't know who will be the next president of the US. That is up to the voters of the US. We have to invest in defence expenditure, massively ramp up arms production and do much more to support Ukraine. Yes. This has nothing to do with Trump. True. It has everything to do with the US, Canada, Iceland, Norway, the UK, the EU and NATO countries. True. All of us need to make sure that we stay safe, that our values are protected and our defence is at maximum capacity. True. Europe needs to increase its support for Ukraine as it is in its interest. True. It's not just a moral, charitable thing to do. It is in Europe's best interest to support Ukraine as well. Also during the conference, Mr. I presume that's Mark Rutte, said, quote, "Everything we are doing now is aimed at Ukraine winning this war, and I don't want to contemplate any other outcome." Great stuff. So Zelensky is now saying very clearly that it's not cool what's going on the Polish border. So what's happening on the border with Poland is abnormal. Quote, "In fact, the situation is not in grain, but rather in politics. Joint decisions, rational decisions are needed to get us out of this situation." Now, I don't know the ins and outs, but it seems to be getting a little bit worse on the border now. And this is really worrying for the economic stability of Ukraine, and also for getting military goods into Ukraine. They are stuck on the border in many cases. Polish farmers intend to completely block the border with Ukraine tomorrow, according to media. That was yesterday. Quote, "Not only border crossings will be blocked, but also communication hubs and access roads to transshipment railway stations and seaports," the message states. This is getting serious, and it is not cool. Polish farmers expand protests, primarily focusing on blockading the Ukrainian border, targeting 100 locations across Poland, including borders, ports and rail, to restrict Ukrainian agricultural imports. They say undercut domestic producers. This definitely needs a resolution, and it needs a resolution right now. Train with grain here, which was scattered by protesting Polish farmers, was heading to Germany and transiting through Poland. All carriages at the border are checked by Polish regulatory authorities and are sealed. I mean, yeah, by all means, block a train or do something to stop something happening, sure. Although I disagree with it here, because I think, for me, the success in Ukraine is more important. But I understand you might have gripes and whatever. Just hope these aren't underwritten by the Kremlin and by nefarious actors, which I think is probably the case. But it's not an either or, it could be both and. But don't go wasting food in a world where hunger is still, of course, a prevailing issue. Don't go doing that. That's just bad form. Anyway, it's my little mini whinge over. North Korean media says that Putin has gifted a car to Kim Jong-un. "Oh, it's those friends again. All right," says Viktor Orban. "Where's my car? Do I get a car?" I mean, you gave Kim a car. He's got a nice car there. Do I get a car? Am I just the Johnny come lately? Russian President Vladimir Putin gave his North Korean counterpart Kim Jong-un a car to signify their special personal relations. That's nice. The state-controlled Korean Central News Agency reported. Right, Belarusian political prisoner. This is what freedom looks like in Belarus. Belarusian political prisoner reportedly dies in custody. I don't want to make light of this. That is sad, and it is bad. Ihar Lednik, a member of the Belarusian Social Democratic Party, BSDP, reportedly died in prison. BSDP announced on Telegram on February the 20th. Somebody do something about that. Let's get rid of Lukashenko. Unfortunately, he is just a puppet of Vladimir Putin, and Putin might have a lot to say about that. Now, as soon as Alexei Navalny's mother, Lyudmila Navalnaya, made a statement about the fact that the body of her elder son was not being released, again, I wonder who was responsible for the death of Navalny. Oh, you're not releasing the body. The regime immediately declared the younger son was now wanted. Alexei Navalny's brother Oleg has been declared wanted again. At the same time, Putin said Russia has more and more supporters around the world, especially in the field of traditional values. Who are those supporters? I mean, really, like more and more? Mali, Eritrea? And your mate Victor and Xi Jinping and Kim Jong-un and Tehran. Khomeini, is he still there? I don't know. So, Yulia Navalnaya calls on the EU not to recognise the Russian election results. This is going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see whether there are countries that officially declare Russia a state sponsor of terrorism. I think that should be just done, obviously. But also whether their election results will be officially called into question. Yulia Navalnaya, the widow of the late Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny, called the European Union not to recognise the results of the Russian presidential election in March. Interesting. Now, talking about traditional values in Russia, this story is Classic. Immersed in Russian disinformation, a Canadian family moves to Russia in an effort to escape the decadent depravity of the gay West and promptly has all their money stolen, complains about it online, is forced to apologise and now can't escape the country. Ouch. So this is from Daily Kos. Says, patriarch of a right-wing Canadian family of 8 had just about enough of the gay people existing in his country. Quote, we didn't feel safe for our children there in the future anymore. There's a lot of left-wing ideology, LGBTQ, trans, just a lot of things we don't agree with and they teach there now. And we wanted to get away from that for our children. So, yeah, there's one safe place for kids. As Teddy Kos says, yeah, if there's one place that's not safe for kids, it's Canada. Russia would be so much safer. Anyway, so they moved to Russia to raise their kids with orthodox values. They gladly took donations on their social media platform, and fellow ideologues gave them money so they could live in Putin's wonderland. They did all of this just 3 weeks ago, and Russian officials assured them that they would work with them to get them established and even help them to get a farm. Long story short, they had lived happily ever after, except they didn't. So first off, the Russian bank where they moved, their funds immediately froze their assets. The amount of money seemed suspicious, as I guess it would since most Russians outside of Putin's circle are dirt poor. As a result, the family doesn't have money to live on, and those nice Russian officials disappeared. Since no one in the family speaks Russian, they've had a bear of a time trying to argue for their money, since Russia doesn't require any bank or any business to hire English translators. In the meantime, they discovered that Russia is a pretty damn miserable place to be right now. So on and so forth. Mother said, I'm very disappointed in this country at this point. I'm ready to jump on a plane and get out of here. We've hit the first snag where you have to engage logic in this country, and it's very, very frustrating. Oh, so on and so forth. I mean, goodness. Yeah. On your head be it. Right. I mean, who moves to Russia thinking, yeah, this is going to be a good move. This will be better. In these times, from Canada. Right. Now, moving on to US news. The US mulls sanctioning Chinese companies over aiding Russia's war. So this is an interesting move and one that has been discussed previously, but nothing's been done about it. It's been, China has been helping Russia through the back door quite often, or dual use components, stuff like that, and it's been a matter of time, I think, before there's been serious consideration for Chinese entities to be sanctioned. So the US is considering imposing sanctions on Chinese firms suspected of fueling Russia's full-scale war against Ukraine, CNBC reported yesterday, citing US Congress members. That's going to be one to watch out for. That could open a whole can of worms. But it could be a case of just a warning shot across the bow. You let these things get out and you say, oh, we're considering sanctioning Chinese goods, and then China goes, and then it becomes a bit of a hot button topic, and there's lots of arguments and lots of bluster. But the result could be that the Chinese could take a little bit of a step back, become a little bit more cautious towards helping Russia. I don't know. International allies criticised the US Speaker Mike Johnson for dodging swift legislative decision on depleted Ukraine's vital defence assistance. So there is, and rightfully so, international condemnation of Speaker Johnson. Pressure on him grows to do something. Now, I know I still have many people in my threads who will say it's the Democrats' fault. It's always going to be the Democrats' fault, even though Speaker Johnson could say, actually, Ukraine is really important and we think you should give more stuff to Ukraine. Doesn't say that. He says, no, and I'm going on a 2-week holiday. But, it's the Democrats' fault. Even though the Democrats and the Republicans did a bipartisan deal on the border that was more efficient than Democrats ever would have otherwise agreed to. And that's what was demanded. There was a deal demanded by Republicans. They went and did the deal with Democrats. They came out with something. And even before they read the deal, even before Mike Johnson read it, he said it's dead on arrival. So this is nothing to do with the Democrats have governed, right? They're trying to govern here. This is my opinion. But the Republicans have demanded something, and then as soon as they've got that, they've moved the goalpost and said, yeah, actually, no. And that's what Langford said. And he's the most conservative senator, voted either the most or the second most conservative senator in Congress, right? This is no kind of rhino. This is no Republican in name only. This is a proper Republican senator who's gone to do that deal on the border, come back. The deal was then misrepresented by news outlets like Fox News, consistently saying, they're going to let 5,000 in today. He's like, no, that's not what it says. You need to understand what this is saying. So on and so forth. And the end result is there's no deal, and Johnson's buggered off for 2 weeks. It's just absolutely unconscionable. And international pressure is being applied. This is not making the US look good. And I'm afraid, for those in the know, it's people like Mike Johnson who are bearing the brunt of this, and rightly so, because he has an overrepresentative position, because he's representing these Trumpian MAGA Republicans. But actually, it passed 70 to 29, the Ukraine aid bill in the Senate, Ukraine, Taiwan and Israel, a bill in the Senate. That's a decent bipartisan majority. And the argument is, and in fact, we know that it will pass in the House of Representatives. So it's only this guy who's stopping it happening. I say only because actually he's been made to do that by the MAGA Republican wing, Marjorie Taylor Greenes and your Matt Gaetzes and your Trump, right? That's what's going on here. And to give Mike Johnson some, I guess, empathy here, he knows that if he tables the deal, he'll be vacated. But actually, I think his days are numbered anyway. I've been listening to a number of people, Republicans as well, assessing him in mainstream media outlets, saying that a lot of them saying, goodness me, we wish we had Kevin McCarthy back. Mike Johnson was just too green around the gills. He's not good enough at doing this. He doesn't command enough respect. He doesn't command enough authority. He's not experienced enough. And there's a lot of people now saying this, and I think they're absolutely right. He's not cut out for that job, and he's been far too easily manipulated. So it's interesting that so many people are saying, bring back Kevin McCarthy, please. And as you know, PS101 here says, well, is it a coincidence that Speaker Johnson blocks aid to US allies at a time when Russia launches major offensives in Ukraine ahead of the presidential election that will offer 30 years of power to Putin? He makes Russia great again. Oh, ouch. Right, Biden says US is considering new sanctions on Russia over Navalny's death. Now, I've been wondering what's going to happen with this, and it would be interesting to watch this space, both in terms of the US and the EU, as to the reaction to Navalny's death. US President Joe Biden told reporters in the White House that he is considering additional sanctions against Russia over Navalny's death in 2021. And I listened to this the other day, actually. He very clearly said that there would be devastating consequences if Navalny was, if he died in jail. So if he was knocked off by the Russians. He was asked that question and he gave a very explicit answer that there will be devastating consequences. Well, it's happened. What are those consequences? And I hope to goodness that Biden doesn't do an Obama here and give a Syrian red line and then go, yeah, not so much. You know, Biden needs to say, yeah, and the devastating consequences are this. But unfortunately, Biden's hands are tied by Congress, so he may say, we're going to do this. But if it requires congressional approval, then we can see what happens there. But if there are other things that can happen that don't require congressional approval, they need to happen big time. And Biden needs to put his fingerprints all over that because he's committed to that previously. Anyway, however, he appeared to mitigate his position when asked about the warning on February the 16th. He said then that the US had already imposed devastating sanctions on Russia before Navalny's death. That's weak source. That is, that's not cool by my reckoning, Biden. You need to come true on your words. Otherwise, your words mean nothing. Right. It's the world. If the world was ending tomorrow, Trump would somehow make it all about him. Right. What are people talking about? This has human garbage, as Adam Kinzinger, Republican, says. Right, so what has been said? Elliot Higgins from Bellingcat says this is an Olympic gold medal level bad take, even for Donald Trump. So Navalny died, and instead of Donald Trump coming out and being a diplomat and saying, this is tremendously sad, this is what I would say. Something like, just off the top of my head, this is a tremendously sad day for democracy. It's a worrying day for international security. If one of the major players in the game of global geopolitical chess has killed, or you might want to say might not want to blame Russia outright, but if an opposition leader in one of these nations has died in jail after being poisoned by the president and then put in jail for extremism, for just being an opposition leader, and that person now died in jail, this is a very sad, a very worrying day for democracy and for the future of international freedom. Something like that. All right, that's what you say. You say something mature like that. Donald J. Trump came out and said the sudden death of Alexei Navalny, what's he going to say? This could be good. Has made me more aware of what is happening in our country. It is a slow, steady progression with crooked, radical left politicians, prosecutors and judges leading us down a path of destruction. Open borders, rigged elections and grossly unfair courtroom decisions are destroying America. We are a nation in decline, a failing nation, MAGA 2024. In other words, he's turned Alexei Navalny's death into an attack on the judges who are raining down legal proclamations on him. And he's talking about how crap America is. And, you know, he's linked that somehow to Alexei Navalny, which is Alexei Navalny's died and Trump says nothing about Alexei Navalny dying. So, right, we all know the link. Again, this is the link to Russia. It's the gift that keeps on giving, DJT at the moment. So we know that Trump has a background with Deutsche Bank, right? That during his legal issues, Deutsche Bank have been, you know, his bank, and they've asked for like tax stuff from Deutsche Bank and all sorts, right? And eventually they went their separate ways. Interesting history between those two entities. Now, we know that Trump has just brought out new shoes because he's desperate for money. So he's got those new gold sneakers. He's selling perfume as well at $99 a pop. Gold sneakers are $300 a pop, I think. Anyway, Russian CEO that paid $9,000 for Trump's autographed shoes is Roman Scharf, former VP at Deutsche Bank. Russian connections. Deutsche Bank, the world leader in money laundering. Shocker. So there you go. Yeah. I don't know. It's all so nefarious, isn't it? Right, Lindsey Graham, who I've mentioned recently, and I'm not necessarily dead against this idea. It seems less good, but it is still better than nothing. Which is we're not going to give assistance, aid packages. We're going to give aid loans to Ukraine, where we'll get that money back, hopefully. And Lindsey Graham's come out and said this because, and he is very forthright about this, this was Trump's idea and this could be workable. And I thought, okay, that's interesting. So at least Lindsey Graham, because he was very strongly pro-Ukraine, and then he did this 180 shift. And I think that's a lot to do with Trump pressure and compromise on Lindsey Graham, as I've said before. Nothing else really explains shifting spinning on a sixpence so much when it's such a 180 shift. And now he's trying to do the right thing, I think, in arguing for assistance to Ukraine. And I think it's really interesting that he has now been placed on Russia's list of terrorists and extremists. And I think this is great. I think this is absolutely brilliant, because if anything's going to make someone act more against Russia, it's Russia placing them on the naughty list. And Lindsey Graham now has no excuse not to continue to push for assistance and aid to Ukraine. So I think that's a bit of an own goal probably for Russia, a bit of a badge of honor for Lindsey Graham, and hopefully is motivation for him to do the right thing. But he's famously flaky and sort of goes with the wind. Right. That's enough. I know many Americans out there will be like, stop having to go at Trumpian politics and this and that. But it's difficult not to when all of this data just presents itself. I can't not talk about this. And I've long written about Donald Trump, right? My opinions of Donald Trump have not changed in 8 years. But what's interesting is this last year hasn't disconfirmed my views. Every single day confirms my views of Donald Trump, whether it's be looking at the court cases that I follow very closely, by the way. All the time I'm not spending on Ukraine, I am following legal cases going on with Donald Trump, interestingly. I spend a lot of time looking into that. all of those legal issues and all of the activities of Donald Trump over the last year have done nothing but confirm my original views about him. It's just, again, he is this eternal narcissist that is borne out by the stuff he says very openly. And I think, you can delude yourself about who he is, but he quite openly says who he is. And it's fairly obvious. Anyway, thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe and share. I probably lost half my viewers from slagging off the DJT again. But anyway, toodle pips. Speak soon.